Yep.
Okay, cool. Now I will go back to sharing screen. So you're juggling like a million tabs always.
Too many tabs gives me anxiety.
Right. Yay. All right. Finally. All right. Everyone see that okay?
Yeah,
Good.
perfect.
Awesome. Okay. Well, let's get started. Very, very warm welcome to those of you who can attend tonight live, but also those of you who are watching this recording. I'd also like to welcome a couple of guests that I'll get to in just a second. But first of all, I would like to do an acknowledgement of country. So I acknowledge that I'm gathered on the traditional lands of the Kulin nations, and particularly the Wurundjeri and Bunurong people. We pay our respects to the elders of the community, past, present, and emerging, who have cared for this land for generations. We acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, and this dispossession remains largely uncompensated and unreconciled. With our acknowledgement comes a commitment to using our work and our platforms to help end this injustice. So welcome. So my name is Tanya Cawthorne. Some of you have had some email contact with me, but I'll just give you a very, very quick little overview of me and my background. So I run a company here in Melbourne called Birthwell Birthright. I'm an independent Lamaze Childbirth Educator, but I'm also a birth doula and obviously a trainer and program director for Lamaze Childbirth Educators and actually also for doulas. I'm currently serving on the Lamaze International Board of Directors. I've recently, as of last week, just stepped down from my role as the international president. So I'm serving one more year on the board as the immediate past president. And this is my 11th year as a Lamaze certified childbirth educator, which is quite hard to wrap my head around. I've been doing it for this long. And this particular program, so I have been training Lamaze childbirth educators in Australia actually since 2016. The year before that, I was in the US to sort of do a training of trainers program in anticipation of getting this program together. And another big milestone was the establishment of Lamaze Australia in 2018. And I'm very pleased to have Leslie, Leslie Arnott joining us tonight as well, who is my co-founder. And she'll talk a little bit later about some of the work that she's doing with Lamaze Australia. And last but definitely not least, I am a mum. I have two great kids, my son who's 13 and my daughter who is 12. So that's just the nutshell on me. I might just pass over to Leslie, lovely Les, who is, as I said, my co-founder at Lamaze Australia. Leslie.
Thank you. I've been involved in maternity services as a consumer advocate and advisor for probably about 21 years now, and I always know how long it's going to be because it's the birth of my first son marks that time. So my eldest son is 21, so I've been involved in it for 21 years.
Wow.
And I was actually involved in other forms of business prior to getting involved in maternity services, but the birth of my child changed everything, and that's the reason I came down this path. I think a lot of people get involved in birth education and birth reform, I think, because of personal experience, enlightenment, trauma, all those types of things. I met Tanya, was it 2016 or 17, Tan, that I came and did your course?
Gosh, I think you were the first year.
Yeah, 16.
Yeah, I'm pretty
right?
sure. Yeah.
2016. And Tanya and I met each other, and it was kind of about a nanosecond where we sort of thought, I think you and I should do some wonderful work together. And so we decided to co-found Lamaze Australia, which is the first affiliate outside the United States. And whilst Lamaze International was a tad nervous about something like that happening because it's the first time it ever happened before. They've soon nestled in and have become very comfortable with the idea that we are developing an affiliate here in Australia. The way that we've developed it is we've kind of split the organization into two. One is in the birth education area to support parents as well as educators and to support Tanya in her training. The other side of it is the BEAR program. And the BEAR, do you want me to talk about the BEAR program now, or should I leave that till later, Tan?
Maybe leave that till a bit later.
I'll leave
You'll
that
see
till
there's a
later.
slide,
Yeah.
for BEAR. Yeah.
So I'll just suffice to say that after about 18 years, I formalized my practical experience, having sat on ministerial committees and having lobbied to bureaucrats and service providers and all that type of thing, and organized media conferences and all that business. I then went and formalized my experience by completing a master's degree in the States. Tanya was the one who actually found the course, and it was a course on maternal child health systems, and that further gave me further articulation in the knowledge that I had already had. So I'm able to apply that in every single thing that I do around birth reform. And on top of that, I now work as the consumer partnerships lead for the Women's Health Research Translation and Impact Network, which is a 5-year initiative funded by the federal government through the Medical Research Futures Fund. That's enough about me.
Amazing. Thank you, Les. And
right.
so she'll talk a little bit more about a particular area within Lamaze Australia that she's sort of heading up. And actually, just before we move on, Leanne, are you happy just to say a quick hello and just introduce yourself quickly? Sorry, I put you on the spot.
Oh, definitely. Hello, everybody, to those who are live and those who will be watching the recording. My name's Leanne. I had the honour of training with Tanya in February this year as a Lamaze Childbirth Educator, and I've actually just recently completed my exams, so eagerly awaiting results. And through my training with Tanya, I was so inspired and motivated that I actually went on to also complete my doula course. And so I did that almost a month ago now, so about 3 weeks ago. So I'm just taking a deep dive into the birthing world and am really loving it and feel very honoured to have been connected with Tanya and honoured to be here tonight.
Awesome. Thank you, Leanne. So I was going to say as well, we if during the presentation you've got questions, feel free to use the chat box to pop them in, but we'll set aside about 10 to 15 minutes towards the end as well, where you're welcome to ask any question of me, of Leslie. Leanne, I thought would be great to have here just as somebody who has recently done the training herself and can kind of really speak from a student perspective as well. So moving along, of course, my presentation decided to freeze. It always does. I'm just going to stop the share and go back into it. Give me 1 second. I think when it stays on a slide for too long, it decides to not go through anymore. Okay, hang on. Hopefully. All right, we're back. Okay. So look, just a very, very brief little history of Lamaze, because I find here in Australia, there's really mixed, I suppose, knowledge and awareness of what Lamaze is. Most people have heard the name. Some people associate it with a breathing method. Some people associate it with the toys, the infant toys, which you might have seen, which seem to hang off every stroller you walk by. But Lamaze is named for an obstetrician called Dr. Fernand Lamaze. He was an obstetrician working in France, and at one point spent a sabbatical in Russia, where he was observing women in labor who were laboring very differently to how he observed women, what was the cultural norm in France at that time, which was in the 50s. And, you know, at that point, historically, that kind of going to a sort of deep dive of, you know, obstetric history, there was the use of medications, a very, very early and very crude form of the epidural called twilight sleep, which was widespread and used in many, many developed countries, including obviously across Europe and even here in Australia. It basically rendered women more or less unconscious, and very disturbingly with very, very little memory of their birth. And what he observed in Russia was that women were moving around freely, that they had lots of female support, kind of, I guess, what we would call modern day doula. And a lot of sort of focused breath work as well. That basically became the sort of the, you know, the kernel of, you know, or the seed of what then became ultimately a method. And back in the day, Lamaze was very much more known as a breathing method. You know, we used to kind of joke about it being called the huffing and puffing classes. The two women who are really kind of credited with launching Lamaze back in the late 50s, early 60s were two women called Marjorie Carmel and Elizabeth Bing. And there was a very famous book you can see there on the slide, Thank You, Dr. Lamaze, which came out and became a little bit of a Bible in its day. And I love this picture here. This is kind of like the old birthing classes, you know, which you had to learn very, very sort of very strict methods of breathing and relaxation. And it was very prescriptive. You had to do your homework and all these sort of things. So that is absolutely not what Lamaze is today. I can reassure you right there. And I'm going to play you just a quick little video and reassure you that this is also not what we teach in Lamaze childbirth classes.
Baby comes through there, and you keep breathing, yeah? Comes out, you keep breathing. And then eventually, slop. Out comes your placenta, yeah? Okay, so from the peak of contraction again in through the mouth and good, one more time. Excellent, that pretty much covers breathing, yeah? It's not rocket science, is it?
How hard should we be blowing out? I read in one of the books that we should use a candle and you pant just enough to make the flame flicker, but not enough to make it blow out, yeah?
Okay. So first of all, there's no we in labour, yeah? And secondly, I can tell you categorically, if you put a naked flame anywhere near a woman in labour, someone's going to get very badly burnt. And by someone, I mean you, Dan. You with me?
I love that. And as I say, Leanne actually observed one of my childbirth classes. So I hope you can attest to the fact that's not how our classes run. So yeah, so as I said, Lamaze moved away from this idea of it being a method or a technique, and really moved into the realm of evidence-based research, and that is really, I suppose, the hallmark of Lamaze today. Everything that we teach is current, it's evidence-based, it's best practice, it's woman-centered, it's family-centered, and we don't teach breathing methods. It's not to say we don't discuss breathing as being a very valuable tool as part of a whole suite or a toolkit of non-pharmacological pain relief. We also teach medical and pharmacological pain relief options as well. It's very balanced, as I said, it's evidence-based, and that's really the sort of the cornerstone of Lamaze education today. And I think that is something that really builds great confidence in your families, and also in providers, midwives and doctors as well, do recognize the name and do hold the name with high regard and respect as well. The foundation, if you like, of what you're teaching, what you will ultimately teach, is something called the 6 healthy birth practices.
Tanya, can I just interrupt you just for 2 seconds?
Sure.
I just had to make a point. You're absolutely right about obstetricians and midwives supporting Lamaze. And because when I work in the Women's Health Research Network, and of course I'm around researchers all the time, and I'm also around obstetricians all the time, and indeed midwives. And there is an acknowledgement, because they know of the work that I do and that you do, that Lamaze has been a long-standing trusted brand, so to speak, and because of its longevity has had the ability to lean on research that has been generated for over 62 years, which is probably the longest standing birth education program in the world, I would think.
It really is. I mean, I often sort of refer to Lamaze as being the grandmother of childbirth education, because if you look at really a lot of birth education programs around the world that are taught today, they really have their genesis in Lamaze, you know.
I just wanted to flag that, because
yeah,
you're absolutely right,
absolutely.
because I work with these researchers and the obstetricians, and they actually do make comment to that it's been around for a long time.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
and actually, we'll just point out, so in Australia, we have, I suppose, a professional peak body organisation called CAPIA, which is Childbirth and Parenting Educators of Australia. Great organisation to join once you have done your training and you become certified. So CAPIA, many of the leadership within CAPIA work within hospitals. They're very senior educators, clinical unit managers, midwives, midwife educators, etc. And this particular program, the Lamaze Childbirth Educator Training Program, is actually the only program that they endorse. And I think, again, that goes back to what Les was saying, is that there is an acknowledgement within the maternity care services and obstetric community that Lamaze is a really trusted name. So, obviously, in the course, we deep dive into, the curriculum. What is it that you're actually teaching families? But just to give you a very, very brief, I suppose, framework, if you like, really what is the foundation of everything that we teach in a Lamaze childbirth class? It's something called the 6 healthy birth practices. And these are obviously they're evidence-based, but they're a great tool for educators to be able to pass on really important and relevant information to families. And you can see here what those 6 healthy birth practices are. I often kind of refer to it as, or trying to use the analogy of a roadmap to safe and healthy birth. So having sort of couples think and imagine and understand that journey that they're going on from the beginning of labor through to the early postnatal period, and that along that way, they're going to have to make numerous decisions and choices that can affect the outcome and the pathway that they continue along. And so teaching the healthy birth practices is a fantastic way to help people to make those decisions, to make informed decisions about their own care, and obviously for their own body and for their baby as well. So if you are interested in just sort of reading up a little bit more about that, you can jump on our website, Lamaze Australia, or the Lamaze International website, and just type in 6 healthy birth practices, and you'll find heaps of information about that. Just a quick little bit more about Lamaze Australia. As Leslie mentioned, we're the first international affiliate outside of the US, and to date the only affiliate. I am hoping that we will establish another affiliate in South America in the near future. But we're very much the pilot, the template, So, and here the photo we've got of our fabulous board. You can see Leslie's there in the front. We've also got Jennifer Lawrence and Pauline Hearns and Liz Lazarus as well. And we are a not-for-profit. We're a charity organization, and obviously our mission is very much mirrors that of our international organization. But there are programs and initiatives here in Australia that are very unique to Australia and to the work that we hope to achieve here. I might just hand back to you, Les, just to talk briefly about the BEAR program. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, I always do that. Yeah, so as previously stated, our organization is split into two areas, one in birth education and further training, and the other is a consumer arm known as the BEAR program, which stands for Birth Education, Advocacy and Research. And this is an area whereby we work to partner with organizations to improve birthing services, and we can do that in a number of different ways. We can do that whereby we can work on getting grant funding to partner with other organizations. We also provide individual advocacy as well as group advocacy, especially for women and their families where they have been traumatized or they weren't satisfied with the birth, and we actually represent them when we go into hospitals and we speak with the service, not in an adversarial way, but more in a partnership way, whereby we can recognize what didn't quite go right, what could have done better, and then helping that service to advance better care. And it's actually worked extremely well. I don't know if you know, but when a piece of research comes out, it takes, in order for the effect of that research, and we're talking about evidence-based research comes out, in order for it to be enacted on the floor of any hospital, it takes an average of about 17 years for it to reach the floor. Our individual advocacy is quite instrumental in affecting changes on the floor overnight. And we've seen it happen, and it's pretty amazing the way it happens, which is partnering with a woman, and then we liaise with the service. We identify what actually went wrong or what could be done better. And then there are changes that are made on the floor right away, and we've seen it happen. So instead of 17 years, it might take 17 days. We're really quite proud of that. Through that too, what's ended up happening is that we've been able to partner with services in the past, whereby they will ask us to then be consumer representatives on their committees in their hospitals and that type of thing. So we can get our voices leveraged in that way through that advocacy work. We also have a group called the PAG, which is a professional advisory group. And that group is made up of clinicians and or allied health, whereby whenever we need to have opinion or professional comment to anything that might be provocative in the media, or perhaps any research that has come out, we look to our PAG to gain information and consensus from our PAG. So we don't have any clinicians sitting on our board as such, but we actually partner with clinicians to gain consensus around certain topics that may be prevalent or current at the moment. What else, Tan? What else? Oh, there was another area that we were developing, which was the Power and Privilege course. This is something that came out of my master's degree a few years ago. And I've since pulled that from the BEAR program because we've discovered that it actually requires a lot more work to roll it out here in Australia. And I'm looking at it actually as possible PhD subject, but it's actually identifying the racial and gender disparities that are quite abundant in maternity services, and looking to see how we can curb that by providing a self-exploratory program for clinicians and service providers, so that they can actually discover where their own culture actually influences the way that they provide care. So I'll just say watch this space with that one. The other thing too is our networks are quite broad. Our networks are across birth educators, but they're also across consumer groups, consumer-led groups, and also peak body women's health organizations who are also connected into a consumer network as well. So it's quite broad. And given Tanya's liaising across Australia with her training program, together with the Women's Health Research Network that I'm involved in, that's a national organization. So we have connections in every single jurisdiction right across Australia. And there's we know in the Women's Health Research Network, we've had 9 representing centres. We're probably going to be increasing to 14 very soon. So we'll have even a broader reach there. Yeah. So that's all from me, Tanya. Anything else? Is there anything I've forgotten?
I don't know, but I mean, certainly if people have questions about, I mean, one thing certainly Leslie looks to graduates of this program are future advocates and people to get involved. Certainly, I mean, you know, currently we have you know, state representatives in Queensland and in WA who were graduates of the program.
New South Wales.
And New South Wales as well. Absolutely. Yep. So, you know, we do find that many people who are drawn to this work, you know, to become educators are natural advocates. You know, it's an area that they're passionate about working in and improving services for families. And, you know, Leslie brings obviously, you know, a wealth of experience and the ability to train people. So even if you don't have a lot of experience or knowledge in this area, don't feel that that is an impediment in any way, because the training and the mentoring is there for you.
Absolutely. And the mentoring is there, and also the support from other advocates. So we actually meet on a semi-regular basis to find out what's going on in various different jurisdictions, and to share you know, ideas about how certain services can move forward with our help and all that type of thing. So absolutely, Tanya, I'm more than happy to mentor people up because we need to bring lots of women's voices into that space, or people's voices into that space, not just a few chosen few. Yeah,
absolutely. Cool, great, thank you. All right, let's move along. So let's sort of get into a little bit more into the heart and soul of the program. Apart from Lamaze being obviously, as we've said, a really well-known and trusted name in childbirth education from the consumer end, in terms of the training itself, it is really regarded internationally as the gold standard of childbirth educator training. It is a really respected and internationally recognized credential, the LCCE, or Lamaze Certified Childbirth Educator, and it is recognized, as said, around the world as well. Here in Australia, this program has been recognised by the Australian College of Midwives and approved for a whopping 39 hours of continuing professional development. So that's great. I do have, you know, traditionally every year, quite a number of midwives doing the course, either to enhance their own educators, teaching skills to teach childbirth ed in their hospitals, or, you know, in some cases because they're thinking longer term, bigger picture, and possibly about starting their own businesses as well. And as I mentioned, CAPIA also endorses this program. In fact, it's the only childbirth educator training program that they do endorse. The pathway to certification. So I'll go through in a moment just, you know, what's involved in the actual face-to-face or the online training version. But actually getting certified with Lamaze is a fairly straightforward process. And you can see from the slide, it's basically a three-step process. The first involves purchasing the Lamaze Learning Guide, which is essentially kind of the Bible, if you like. It's a document that Leanne is very, very familiar with, recently having had read it probably back to front several times. It is a fairly intimidating sort of study guide. It's pretty large, but it's certainly not something I want people to feel in any way intimidated by. One of the, I think, really valuable aspects of this training is that we spend many, many months after the actual training meeting once a month online for a guided study session, which I facilitate, which is aimed at helping people to break down that learning guide into manageable chunks, module by module, month by month. So it never hopefully feels too overwhelming in one go. The second step here is to complete an accredited training program. Obviously, that's my 5-day program, which can be done face-to-face in person, or can be done online as well. And the third and final step is to sit and pass the international certification exam. And it is an online multiple choice exam, which is offered twice a year. Leanne has said just sat it, so we have an end of year sort of November exam window, and then the other one is usually around May. So there's 2 opportunities a year to sit the exam, and in fact, once you've done the training program, you do have up to 3 years to sit the exam. So sometimes things happen and people don't get the opportunity to do the very next exam cycle, but you don't have to stress. You can register for a future exam date. So how do you get certified? So as I said, the first part really is doing the actual training program, and whether it's in person or online, it's exactly the same length of time and the same commitment. It's 5 full days. With the online version, I often do split it across sort of 2 weekends, because I find that being online on Zoom for long periods of time can be a little bit draining mentally, particularly. So I find that splitting it across 2 weekends is kind of a much easier way to kind of absorb that information. But otherwise, if we're doing it in person, it's 5 straight days, usually a Wednesday to Sunday, but depends on the city. Every year we hold trainings here in Melbourne. I go to Sydney and usually Brisbane as well. And I have found that, thanks to COVID, this sort of unexpected silver lining with COVID was that, in fact, that this program works beautifully as a virtual training program, and absolutely nothing is lost by doing it virtually as well. And I found when people are living in quite rural, remote areas, or they have other restrictions, young children at home, babies, etc., they might find it actually a bit challenging to travel to a major metro city for 5 days. So the online is actually a perfect solution for many, many people. Look, how long will it take you to become certified? It really, really varies on you as an individual. I really don't want people to feel pressured and that, they absolutely must sit the very next exam cycle, because some people are just not ready. And, sometimes things happen between doing the training and the exam. They might start a new job. They might have moved state. They might have had a baby. There's a million things that, life gets in the way. And then they just sort of feel very overwhelmed, and they sort of go, oh, there's no way I can do it. So I say, well, don't put that ridiculous pressure on yourself. With these study sessions that I run, they run often 2 whole cycles of that every year. So I often have people join a whole series of study sessions that were not part of the group. They've come from a previous training and they just slot in, or they come in for a refresher. And that's a standing invitation. There's no limitation on, how many times you can join those study sessions, or even if you've done them before and you want to come and do a whole new cycle, there's an open invitation to join them whenever you like. I also record them. So again, for people who can't make those study sessions live, you can watch the recordings in your own time. So that's, pretty much this slide is exactly what happens. We finish the course. Usually there's a little gap of about 3 or 4 weeks before we launch the first study session. And as I said, they will happen once a month, usually, after dinner one night during the week. We try and make it as friendly for families and, after work and all the other things. But of course, it's impossible to please everybody, and sometimes people just can't make every session, and said that's not a problem. That's why we record them. And the way we structure these study sessions, as I said, is that we really systematically go through the Lamaze Learning Guide. From memory, there are 6 modules in the Learning Guide. Is that right, Leanne? I think there's 6. I should know this. I've gone through it about 53,000 times. But every session, every monthly session we focus on a different module. The other thing we do as well, about a month before the exam, the next exam window opens, we do a whole session which is devoted to exam preparation. So we go through, you know, kind of a presentation that Lamaze International produced, which helps, potential exam students to understand the structure of the exam, what's tested, what's not tested, how it's graded, all of those sort of things. And then we do a practice exam of some, it works out to about a third of the number of questions that you would ultimately answer in the exam, but they are all questions from past exams. So it's quite representative of the type of question that you would get asked. And it's usually scheduled quite deliberately before the close of application or registrations for the exams, because there's always people who are a little bit on the fence at that point, and they're not 100% sure if they feel ready. And sometimes doing that exam prep session is the deciding factor for them. And they actually, more often than not, feel a whole lot more confident than they did before. And they realize, in fact, that they are more than ready to sit the exam. So it's actually a bit of a confidence booster for them, that I find. A little bit here about the cost of the program. And I just... and I'll send this PowerPoint out as well, so don't feel like you have to kind of write things down. But essentially, to make it easy, there are costs payable to me directly or to Birthwell Birthright, and then there are costs payable to Lamaze International, and I guess for any books that you may choose to purchase yourself, say from online from Amazon. So really, the cost to me is for the training and all of the study sessions. But also does include one of the core reading textbooks, which is included in the course as well. I always do sort of a super early bird, if you like. So for all the 2023 programs, training programs, for people who register basically by New Year's Eve this year, there's a 15% discount. So that's for all the courses next year. You do not need to pay for the course in full. You basically only need to pay the deposit, which is $400. The balance is not due until 30 days before the start of your chosen program, if that makes sense. So if you're not doing, till Brisbane next year, which is later on in the year, you're not going to get invoiced for the balance until a month before that course starts. I always offer really flexible payment programs as well, payment plans. And I would just say I've got one more training this year. It's a live online program that's starting actually in just a couple of weeks at early December. I have a very, very small number of spots left. And it's interesting, when people registered for this course and I asked, what courses were you interested in? The overwhelming majority of you ticked this end of year course. So there's no way I can accommodate if everybody said, yes, I want to do the December course. There's no way I could, do that, because I do keep the courses quite small. But please do be in touch if, if this course fills and you're still really keen to do an online course, say before the one that's actually scheduled for next year, let me know, and there's a possibility I might be able to schedule another one earlier in the year. But if you are super keen, and said, get your registration in for the December course this year, and I am still offering actually a 10% sort of a regular early bird for this one as well. So, but if you've got questions about costs or payment plans or anything like that, don't hesitate to get in touch with me anytime. Also, just to give you a quick sort of summary of what's included in the fee. So as I said, it's the 5 days of the training, whether that's in person or online. One of the textbooks, you actually get a student workbook, which I've also produced as an additional resource guide, and all those monthly study sessions as well through to the exam. There are a few costs which are not included, and these are payable, as I said, directly to Lamaze International. There's your learning guide, which is really a crucial, guide. You sort of really cannot prepare for the exam without it. In US dollars, that's $225. You don't need it before we start the training, but you would need it before our first study session. So if you don't need, if you don't want to get it straight away, that's not a problem. When you are ready to sit the exam, and when registration's open for that round, which is usually about sort of 2 months before the actual exam window, then there is a cost, again, payable to Lamaze International, which is kind of it encompasses the actual exam registration fee, which includes a remote proctor. You have a live person who is actually supervising you sitting the exam. You can sit the exam from the comfort of your own home. You don't need to sit in a room or a testing center or anything like that. Also bundled into that fee is 3 years of certification and membership with Lamaze International. So that's $395 US. Once you sat and passed the exam, though, you won't have any fees payable to Lamaze International for 3 more years. And then it's a little bit less than that because you're not sitting the exam again. So it's really just your membership and certification fees. And then just finally, there is a list of recommended reading. It's not a requirement. It's really for your own additional, resources and learning and helping you to feel really prepared, particularly for the exam. So there's about 3 or 4 books there, which you're welcome to purchase. And I sort of gone online. I occasionally go on and just sort of look at, who's offering them cheapest, be it Amazon, Book Depository, whatever it might be. I'd be surprised if you would spend more than $100 in total for all of them. And of course, there are places that you can get, these books secondhand and things like that as well. So don't stress about that as a huge cost. Okay, yes, so here's just the learning guide. As I said, it really forms the foundation of your study and your preparation for the exam. It's a PDF, which when you purchase online, you can download to your computer. Entirely up to you if you are the type of learner that wants to print things out so you can, sticky note and post it and highlight and all those sort of things. But as I said, you don't need that right at the beginning when we start the training, only really when we start with our study sessions. Okay. So as I mentioned, once you sit the exam or you register to sit for the exam, that fee incorporates your certification and your membership fees. Remember also that you do have up to 3 years to sit that exam, so it's not necessarily a cost that comes, immediately after the training program costs. And then once that 3 years is up, you need to recertify and renew your membership as well. Okay. Just a little bit quickly about some of the many benefits actually of being a member with Lamaze International. So these are benefits. Our membership, by the way, is extremely international. We have members all over the world, educators teaching Lamaze classes all over the world, literally. And one of the things as well that I encourage, people who've done the training, who've gone on to certify, is to really look at getting involved with Lamaze International, because there are many, many ways that you can get involved with the organization, volunteering on committees and councils and events and all sorts of things. We have a highly regarded peer-reviewed journal, which comes out quarterly, called the Journal of Perinatal Education. And that's a great extra resource for you to be staying on top of current evidence-based research and papers and articles from people and researchers from all over the world. We have a monthly members only email newsletter called Inside Lamaze. We also have a really well known as within the birth community globally, an evidence-based research blog called Connecting the Dots, which is edited by Sharon Musa. Many of my past students have also contributed articles to Connecting the Dots, which is amazing. In terms of your career, sort of resources as well, we have a whole members only section of the website. So there's lots and lots of, great resources there. Many of them are free, things for you to download that you can use to really help, market your own business, etc. And of course, continuing. Yes, sorry. Yes, Leslie, go ahead.
One of the things that Lamaze does too is it offers every now and then free training for you to accrue your points, which is really fantastic. I always find that you might have 1 or 2 points that you need to get, and those courses are invaluable, and they're free.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
Absolutely. And even the ones that come at a sort of nominal fee, they're always cheaper for Lamaze members than just for the general public as well. They're very, very affordable. We also every year will have a fairly significant continuing education, professional development, summit, conference of some kind. Every other year, we usually run an advocacy summit. We just had a one-day sort of more general sort of online conference as well. So there's, lots of ways to stay up to date with your research and information, throughout the year. And of course, in doing so, you maintain your continuing education points, which you need to accrue to become, to recertify with Lamaze. We've got some great sort of community-based peer group sort of platforms as well. We have a private Facebook group. We have 2 actually. We've got the one for all Lamaze International members, which you can see on the slide there, is called Lamaze Childbirth Professionals. Once you're certified, you put a request in to join, and one of the admins will admit you to the group. And that's our international community. And then for past and current members of the Lamaze Australia community, we also have a private Facebook group as well, which is very active. Also on the Lamaze International website, we have an international directory of membership. Also a fantastic bonus add is you get full institutional access to the Cochrane Library. So if you're really looking for, the absolute gold standard in evidence-based research, you don't look any further than Cochrane. And it's a great benefit of Lamaze membership that you can access the full studies and download just about, well, literally everything from there. I mentioned there were a few books that Lamaze recommended as additional reading. As I said, these are recommended. They're not a requirement of the course. And to be honest, this is my observation, is that people who do this training universally have one thing in common. We're all birth junkies, and it's not an issue of buying these books. It's stopping buying books. And you find that you're probably going to need to buy more bookshelves to accommodate the growing library of books, and that's certainly my addiction. So the one in the top left corner there, Giving Birth with Confidence, that's the Lamaze book that's included in your training, so you don't need to purchase that. Rhea Dempsey's book, Rhea, for those of you who are not familiar with Rhea, she's a Melbourne-based sort of Australian legend in many ways in the birthing world. She's written a couple of fabulous books. This was her first book. I think it's required reading for anybody having a baby in this country, but I think it's a great book for birth workers, educators, doulas, midwives, etc. So that's just my personal addition to the recommended reading. And they do also recommend a couple of other books, Pregnancy, Childbirth and the Newborn, which was written by Penny Simpkin and et al. and other great writers. It's a very comprehensive book, has some great resources in there, particularly for the exam, I think, to help you prepare for the exam. And they also recommend a really good comprehensive book on breastfeeding as well, of which, of course, there are many, many to choose from you know, in that category. So just to quickly just show you, these are the upcoming training dates. As I said, I have one final program for this year coming up very, very soon, starting on the 2nd of December. It is running across these 2 consecutive weekends, which I'm breaking it up. So 3 days, week 1, and then the final 2 days on the next weekend. Excuse me, but in 2023, I'll be doing live in-person courses here in Melbourne in February, in Sydney in June, and in Brisbane in August, and then one more online course in October. So, but look, occasionally I do get people from other cities and states who would love a training in their city, and I'm happy to travel if there is sufficient, you know, interest and demand. So if there is some way that you would be really keen to see a program, again, please be in touch with me. How do you register? It's very, very simple. If you've registered for this webinar, you've probably already been to the page that I'm talking about. So you go onto my website, you'll see on the actual training program page, there is an online registration form, which only takes a few minutes to fill in. It then redirects you to PayPal to pay that deposit. And then I'm in touch with you directly just to confirm that I've received all of that. And I send you quite a detailed email, which kind of gives you all the next steps, you know, how to basically get yourself ready and prepared for the course, depending on which one you've registered for. And of course, you know, as I said, there is the super early bird if you register for any of the 2023 programs before the end of this year. And for the few places that I have available for December, there's still the opportunity to just do the regular early bird, which is still 10% discount. So that's pretty much it. I feel like I've just thrown an enormous amount of information at you, which is not unlike the course itself, where people sort of go home feeling like, oh my God, excited and exhilarated, but at the same time, it's like a lot of information. But I did want to give you the opportunity if there were some questions. I've had a couple of people just joining a little bit later. So welcome if you joined a little bit later on. I might just stop the share here now, so we can go back to here. But I have recorded it, so don't worry about having missed some of the earlier part of the presentation. But certainly we've got a couple of minutes, so please feel free to either put something in the chat or if anyone's got any questions. I don't know, Janella, if you've got to hear us any of this in the end, hopefully some of it, but otherwise you'll hopefully be able to watch it on the replay. Les, or is there anything you want to?
If it's okay, given no one's going to ask a question, I just wanted to jump in and, you mentioned that you feel like you've just thrown a whole lot of information. And I agree. And I think listening to that, it's all, so relevant what you were saying, and it is a lot. And I suppose initially in those initial stages, taking it in, it feels overwhelming, but I can assure you from having just gone through the process myself, it's not overwhelming at all. And I know there's people that have just joined, but hopefully you'll go back and watch the recording that Tanya mentioned about the study sessions, which are just invaluable. They, they're very casual, low key, social to an extent, but it's also a way of just keeping you sort of on track and having a little bit of accountability to yourself and others, whilst, Tanya's not there cracking the whip saying, who's at my study session. If you want to succeed, you do get that sense of accountability. Furthermore, with books, Tanya recommended, buying secondhand. I bought a lot of mine actually off Facebook Marketplace. A lot of new mums had read the books and then they were getting rid of them. So I got them at bargain rates of, you know, $5 and $10. And if they're in Whoop Whoop, you get them to post them to for $10. You're still saving a lot of money.
Leanne,
And
can I ask you a question?
please.
Given that you are a immediate past student of Tanya's,
Yes.
can you talk a little bit about what those study sessions are like and what you got out of them? What was the most important thing that you got out of those study sessions?
So the study sessions, with each module, there are a set of review questions, which you essentially, you know, it is exactly that. It's reviewing that module and just sort of a summary and a recap of that. So the study sessions, most of the time they were held at, you know, convenient times for me personally and a lot of others. We had really good attendance, which was generally 7:30 on a Tuesday night, I think we chose, and that was a collaborative effort. Tanya just sort of sent out saying, how does this feel? Also booked well in advance, so it's not, you know, just a random thing. And furthermore, Tanya acts like a PA. You get a reminder message to say hello. Like, oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I would never forget, but it was lovely to get that reminder.
Yeah, Leanne, that's one of the things I'm so pleased that you said that, because I was kind of trying to tease that out, and that is that one of the things that this course Tanya is really good at is supporting her students to pass, and to pass well. In the United States, they look at Tanya, and I certainly do, as the gold standard. Her conversion rate is extraordinary, given other educators across the world. And Tanya, I think it's amazing that you provide the time that you provide for your students to help them pass, and that's all unpaid work that she does. She just is so passionate about it. She wants her students to pass, and to pass well. So she's just an amazing support person to have to get you through it. And that's why it's not overwhelming, because she makes it easy.
Well, I mean,
for you
I
to
feel like I think
learn.
my whole approach and philosophy is that, you know, I know that it is enormous investment in people's time and financially, and, you know, people don't make this decision to do this training lightly. It's often something that's a very deeply considered decision. For people like Leanne and myself, actually included, when I did the training, I realized that this had the potential to be a really life-changing, career-changing opportunity. So I feel a huge responsibility, really, that, you know, I need to give just as much, if not more, back to to the student, because, you know, I feel like they're, you know, really their investment, you know, is mine to give back to them as well. And really their success is my success. It's the continued success of seeing Lamaze develop in Australia, to see now more and more educators across the country, to see the recognition of Lamaze education growing amongst parents is amazing. I mean, when I did start the training, when I started, you know, as a Lamaze educator in Australia, I'd been living overseas for 10 years and came back as a, you know, newly very green, newly certified Lamaze educator, naively believing or assuming that there were lots of educators, you know, dotted all around Australia. And I discovered very quickly that I was it. I was literally the only certified educator in Australia.
But you've changed all that, haven't you?
That is somewhat changed.
Lots around
That's somewhat changed. So yes, absolutely. Anyway, so that's all very, very, very exciting. And so yes, certainly I feel, and just to sort of also just add to what Leanne was saying about the study sessions. And again, this has been my experience now over sort of about 6 years, that the students who really commit, and I understand not everybody can make every session, that's not what I'm talking about, but consistently make an effort to attend those sessions, to do the reading, to actually do some of those module review questions and really show up, they're the ones who fly through the exam. I'm not saying the exam is easy. It is challenging. You know, Leanne's just sat it. We've all sat it at some point. It's not easy. It's not designed to be a walk in the park. It is meant to really test the knowledge necessary for a new childbirth educator to have as a bare minimum, but that's still a lot of information that you need in your head. So certainly students who show up and commit to that ongoing study process really do find it a lot easier to sit the exam, and they don't feel as overwhelmed really when it comes to sitting the exam. Alexandra's got a question. How many students are in a session at a time? So do you mean how many people do I have in the training program, or in a childbirth class with parents? Just make sure I clarify what you're asking. Just wait for a second. I'm going to assume how many people are in a training program. So correct me if that's not what you mean, but I think the maximum I would have in any given training program would be 12 people. And I've had 12, and that's fine. It usually averages around 10. I find 10's a really good number. It's good for group work. It's good for making sure that everybody has an opportunity to ask questions, and there's lots and lots of discussion. That's a great part of this training as well, is that really robust, passionate discussion. If anything, my big job is to rein it all back in so that we actually get through all the content every day. So not too big, enough that we can really do some good group work, but not too big that people feel that they don't have their voice heard, if that makes sense.
You know, Tanya, I was reading some research years ago about the ideal group in terms of numbers. And in ancient times, when men went out to do the hunt, they ascertained and worked out that anywhere between 8 to 12 people was absolutely ideal, and beyond 12 was too much, and beyond 8 was too weak. And that's how they form sports teams now. That's where that comes from, and it bleeds into other areas, and that's exactly what you just said.
That's
you said 10's an ideal.
Yes.
Yeah, you said
Yes.
10's an ideal. It's like smacks the sweet spot right between 8 and 12.
Excellent. Yeah. So and we talk in the actual training program about that, but from the parent perspective as well, how many people would you ideally have in a childbirth class? So that's something we certainly tackle in the training. So hopefully that answers your question, Alexandra. Before we go, any questions from anybody else? Obviously I know that a lot of people registered and couldn't attend live, so please feel free to message me. Send
that's
me
a good
an email.
question in the chat. That's a really good question.
Yeah.
Is the certification internationally recognized, or any change in the regulations recently? That's a good question.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, so it is recognized internationally.
Yeah. Oh, that's so odd. It's not coming up on my.
Yeah, me either.
Yeah. Somebody must have messaged you specifically, Leslie. You want to read it out? Sorry.
Oh, yeah, it's to me. Sorry. It says, is the certification internationally recognized, or any change in the regulations recently?
Yeah, no, so yes, it is internationally recognized.
Yeah.
So the Lamaze certification is actually the only childbirth educator training program in the world, which is accredited by an organization that is in the US called the NCCA, which is the National Council of Certifying Agencies. Typically, NCCA accredit things like nursing programs at universities. And so the Lamaze training is unique in that it's the only childbirth ed training program that meets that criteria. Even though it is US based, NCCA is internationally recognized, and people understand that for a childbirth educator training program to be accredited by a body like that, means that it's certainly a very robust training. So it is a certification that's recognized around the world.
And it's also hard. It's also difficult to get that certification. So there's certain criteria that Lamaze has to meet in order for it to be approved.
Exactly. And, you know, in order to stay certified, you do need to stay current with your continuing education. You need to accrue 25 hours of approved continuing education in a 3-year period. It is relatively easy to stay on top of everything. Again, most people who are attracted to this work just do it out of, you know, their passion and love for the profession, and they will regularly go to, you know, attend webinars, they'll go to conferences and so forth. So it's not difficult to stay up to date, but that's an important part of being a Lamaze educator, that you do recertify in order to keep your credential. And that ensures that what you're teaching your families is current, up-to-date, evidence-based information. So that's a very big part of what we do and what that credential stands for.
The other thing too that Lamaze are really good at as well is that if there's something that you really want to study, and it's not accredited by Lamaze Australia or acknowledged with points, they actually will consider it. And I think that's fantastic too. So some of my work with the Women's Health Research Network, they would actually accredit some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And one thing I just quickly add, because I know we're going a little bit over time, so we'll wrap up, but Lamaze Australia being an affiliate of Lamaze International, any professional development activity that we run, a training, a workshop, a conference, is automatically approved for continuing education hours with Lamaze. So that's another avenue basically to seek your continuing education points. Cool. Excellent. Well, thank you so much to those of you who were able to come, and I hope those of you who are watching the replay, you know, that hopefully we answered questions that you might have had about the course, about certifying with Lamaze. Obviously you have my email address, you know, from the registration for this webinar. So if you have other questions, please do be in touch anytime. If you are keen to register for this end of year program, as I said, there really are only, I think, about 3 spots. So if you are really keen to get going, then I would definitely complete your registration sooner rather than later. But thank you also to Leslie and to Leanne for joining us tonight, and for sharing your perspectives and your experience as well. It's been really, really helpful.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Awesome.
no worries, Tan.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a good night, and look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks so much, Tan.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Good night.